usually speaking to Americans or people from the other side of the world, obviously it's usually night time here. So
Right. And yeah, and I'm entering the phase where I never have daylight because I'm in Iceland and the sun rises now at 10:30 and sets at 3:30. So it's rare to find a window of daylight with
wow.
people in America.
I was actually going to ask about that. I read your bio, so I have a bit of an idea, but I'm going to play along and just pretend like I don't. So why Iceland?
Heaven is a hole and it always asks for more. And as much as it was expected, you ain't got.
Why Iceland? I moved here or came here in July. Sorry, what month is it? I came here in July to work on some film compositions and just ended up staying here.
It does look like a very beautiful, albeit not necessarily welcoming a country.
You know, it's been so lovely. And all the people here have been really amazing. And I found a really incredible community of people. I think because I had friends here already, it was a little bit easier for me to integrate because I can hear that Icelanders, while they're very lovely and warm, they can, to outsiders, you kind of have to like pay your dues a little bit before they let you in. So I've been lucky to be let into a really nice community of people since I was here working in music. I kind of made a really good group of friends in the music scene. So I was very lucky. And it's gorgeous here. I mean, I love Iceland. It's so cinematic and every day is different and moody and dramatic and the landscape is dramatic and it's just, I love it.
I was actually going to ask that because it does seem like a perfect place for someone working with these type of sounds. What most people think about when they think about Icelandic music is I guess people like Björk and Sigur Rós and things that do sound cinematic and grand. And I was wondering how, or is that influencing your work in any way?
Um, I don't know yet because I haven't really written since I've been here. So, but yeah, I think my mind is opening up a little bit more to like the ambient world of music because I'm more somebody who listens to, I love old-fashioned music. I love the Ink Spots and like Sam Cooke and like 40s and 50s music, particularly just like really warm kind of like Julie London and things that feel really romantic. And so I always kind of gravitate towards that kind of music. And here you meet a lot of artists who do ambient music or they do very cinematic kind of instrumental stuff. And so just through having friends and then checking out their music, I've sort of grown a new appreciation for that because it matches the scenery and you kind of see where it comes from and you see how you would write that kind of music here. Like when you get to know the people who are creating music like that, that's so, it feels like the place. And so I have a deeper appreciation for it now. And it's actually kind of an interesting challenge, like to think about trying to write something that's just instrumental or ambient. And you kind of start to notice the difference in the nuances of what makes something good and bad. Cause I'm not really, I never really listened to ambient music. So I don't really know. It all kind of sounded the same before. And now I'm kind of starting to understand it.
Right. I was actually thinking because, so I guess our initial interaction was the review we did for your single, and maybe it was sort of narrow-minded, but we compared it to Nico and I think to Jane Birkin, if I'm not mistaken. And what I was thinking now, as you were talking, is that kind of music, what they were doing was sort of, well, they were new, but it was sort of old-fashioned for the moment when they were playing it, or the Velvet Underground, and obviously Nico's strange early records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the really nice review, by the way. It's rare that people take the time to actually write in-depth reviews like that, and yours was very kind, very generous. And those comparisons were really sweet and lovely. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, sorry, what's really the question? Or were you just commenting?
I suppose it was more of a comment, but
Yeah.
it's also what I was sort of getting at is that the first thing you'd describe your music as would maybe be a mixture of dream pop, shoegaze, and those elements of 60s, late 60s, just sort of cool pop rock. And I'm wondering, I was surprised by what you told me were your influences. And in a way, I'm wondering, how do you start writing that and how do you start arranging that? Because it seems it seems like a lot of work, and it seems like you have to have everything sort of neatly designed before you start it.
Yeah, that would be the dream, wouldn't it? Yes, I don't really have a process. I wish I had a better answer for this, but I always just feel like every time I write a song, it feels like a happy accident. I never really feel like I know what I'm doing. I know it sounds cliche, but it really does just come from somewhere else. I can't really take credit for it. Usually it's just sort of a feeling or a moment that it usually comes to me like in a very complete idea. So I'll kind of hear the idea and I hear the arrangement with it, and it's almost like it's a little radio playing in my head as if the song has already been written or I've already heard it before. So I generally have a really good idea as soon as something comes to me, what instruments I want on, what kind of vibe I want it to have. Do I want it to feel romantic or more upbeat or rock, or have influences of like Neil Young kind of guitars, or have more of like like a romantic 40s 50s feel with flutes or strings, or so I wish I had an answer, and I wish that it was organized up front. I think I'm getting a little bit better at organizing the process, but it's the first record I've made really since I was a teenager. So, and I didn't really know that I was making a record. So I just thought I was writing songs, and because I had quit music for a long time, and I've always written, I kept writing even when I wasn't doing music professionally, but I didn't really know it was going to be anything that I would put out into the world or take seriously. We just were doing it for fun, and then I sat on it for 3 years just going, maybe I won't release this. I don't know if it's good enough. I don't know. It just sounds all over the place. Maybe it sounds messy. So it's nice that to you it sounds put together and organized.
It does.
And but we chipped away at it for a long time. And my guitar player, Jerry, who also produced the album with me, it's just incredible. He's like a sound library. So I kind of consider him like my musical other half. It's like I can hear how I want it to sound, but I don't really have the technical mind to achieve the sounds. And Jerry is kind of like the technical part of my brain that I wish I had. I can say, oh, I want it to sound like this, and he can immediately dial the sound in through a space echo and then through a guitar pedal, and put it through the right amp, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. Whereas before I tried to make the record 3 different times with 3 different people, and because I'm not a very technical person when it comes to recording, it's really frustrating for me to try, and when you hear it so clearly in your head and then you try to get it out, it can feel exhausting. So when you find the right person who's just really like cut from the same cloth as you, this record wouldn't sound the way it would without all of the players. And Jerry played a big producer role, but really the entire band was just like all of my missing pieces. They kind of came together and they just made it sound like how I really wanted it to feel. So I'm really lucky to have found the right puzzle pieces for the record.
I was actually going to ask, how does communication work? Because, and this may sound ignorant and sorry, but as a musician with relatively low level of skill, usually when I want to communicate a piece of music, I can only maybe play it on the guitar or hum it. But how do you get to communicate those ideas just so somebody can replicate what you're hearing? How does that work?
I've found that, so I usually just use GarageBand, very advanced. I've had the same interface for like 12 years. It's just this old USB interface with an SM58 that I use to record all of my demos. And I always map out the idea first as far as I can with just guitar. For this record, it was like guitar, flute, and vocals. And so I usually layer a ton of vocals, and a lot of those vocal parts end up becoming instrumental parts, but I kind of hum all of the things that I hear. And some songs I have like a more distinct idea of what I want the drums to feel like. I'm a very weak drummer, but you know, I know when something's wrong, but I don't necessarily know how to play it right. So, but yeah, I usually just what I do is write all the songs, I demo them out in GarageBand with all the harmonies I want, and the vocal layers and the guitar stuff, and then send it to the band, and we all kind of start working together to build the arrangements.
And I was actually going to ask about the record, and let me know if I'm making a mistake, and I apologize beforehand. But I've heard the singles; they're available and they're great. I understand they're going to be part of the record, and if I understood correctly, it's something of a something of a concept record.
It is, yeah. I didn't know it was until this year, but I kind of figured it out way after the fact. So it was. You know, I was sitting there just trying to think of a name for the album, and it never came to me. Usually at the last second, like intuitively with song titles or with anything, it kind of comes to me, and I just couldn't get a record title. I was like, I don't know what this is. And for a long time, I didn't put it out because I was actually really worried that it just felt scattered, or that it didn't feel cohesive, or because I wrote it in such a chaotic time period of my life when I was living in Nashville, that I didn't have a clear vision for it. But then once I started writing out all the lyrics for my press person, I was just like, oh, there's so obviously a common theme here. I want the truth from people. I want the truth from politics. I want the truth from relationships. I just want transparency. I want honesty. And anytime I feel confused in other songs, it's because I'm trying to get to the truth. And then the first song on the album is called The Truth Will Always Find a Way. And then it ends with a song called Be True. So I was just like, okay, I think the truth is probably the concept for the album, and me trying to figure out what the truth is. What is my truth? What even is the truth? It's kind of a philosophical record because I'm a philosophical person. I'm always keeping myself up at night just wondering, you know, what's the meaning of life? What are we doing here? What am I doing here? What am I contributing with my existence? And you know, so yeah, I guess that's the common theme when I look at it. But I didn't know that when I was writing it. When I was writing it, I just felt confused and lost and trying to survive and working 1,000 jobs and trying to figure out if I even wanted to be a musician again professionally. So it's interesting how it all can kind of, when the dust clears, you can kind of see the picture of the album later.
Was okay, I know you mentioned Nashville. Was that part of a music-related decision? Because obviously it's such a famous songwriter town, I suppose.
Yeah, it was not so much to go there to work with anyone in particular, but I was living in Brooklyn before that, and I was working 9-to-5 jobs for a while before I decided to go back into music when I was 27, just because I was really unhappy. I quit music when I was 18 and then swore I would never ever go back into the music industry. And here I am back for more. But yeah, I worked at a sound design studio in Brooklyn, and that was the last job I had before I moved to Nashville. And being that close to music again without actually being able to make it, I was just the producer upstairs, like organizing all of the sound files for the people who are actually composing music downstairs. And I just thought, you know, life is too short. And I tried the 9-to-5 thing for 6 years, and I'm not as happy. I'd rather be doing what I want on my own terms. And so I decided to move to Nashville just to lower my financial overhead. And I just thought, okay, where's a place that I can move that's not New York or LA expensive, and also has a lot of musicians and studios, and a place where I might be able to go and figure out what I even sound like again, and try and find my sound and put a band together and everything else. So that's why I moved to Nashville.
And you were mentioning your preferred artist in the beginning. I should actually ask, because it sounds so distinct, the music I've heard. What were you listening to during writing and recording the album? I know you mentioned it happened during a longer period of time, but is there anything that kind of ties it all together?
I would say, oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, the record was written over 5 years, so there's a lot of music listening happening in there. But I think I got really into the Ram record. I kind of dug into a lot of old 70s stuff. It was like a lot of music
Wow.
that I've been wanting to listen to for a long time, or just really dig into the catalogs of certain artists that I'd never really dug into. It was like, oh, I like their hit song, but I never really listened to their full album, or kind of like more secret solo albums of different artists, like the George Harrison catalog or Linda Ronstadt's catalog or Carly Simon. Just like I would just go and pick 99-cent records out in Nashville and just give it a shot and just be like, okay, well, I know this, I've heard of this person, and let me just see what this whole album sounds like, because I never actually sat down and listened to a record. So, and I also listened to a lot of Loudon Wainwright, and yeah, I just kind of dug into a lot of artists that I just didn't have time to listen to before when I was in New York, because I was so busy and tired, and I had a little bit more space to actually just sit by my record player a lot in Nashville and dive deep into different artists' catalog, and did listen to a lot of French artists as well. So Jane Birkin and a lot of French pop, and but also, I mean, I listen to everything. So I listen to a lot of classical, and I love, like I was saying, a lot of old-fashioned, old-timey records and old soul. There's nothing like, I love Sam Cooke records, and just even, I don't know, I just went nuts. I listened to everything you could think of. But also a lot of my friends at the time in Nashville were all so eclectically different. Like my friend Ron Gallo, who is kind of like punk rock wild person, and but his music kind of energized me in one way. And then my other close friend in Nashville is an artist called Erin Ray, and she just has like a honey sweet voice, and she's more of a singer-songwriter. So yeah, my friend group in Nashville was a mix. And then Jerry, my guitar player, he's a Beatles head. He loves the Beatles, and he can, but I mean, he knows every record inside and out from any time period. He's just that kind of person. So, and then Ian Ferguson, who also played on the album, and he helped me kind of carve out the original demos, and he wrote some of my favorite guitar parts on the album. As far as like the interludes and the solos go, like he came up with the slide guitar part in Suited, in the the little interlude where the guitars kind of chase each other back and forth. And but yeah, he also makes amazing music himself, and he's very into Paul McCartney and the Beatles and T-Rex and all that stuff. So I love all of it, and it was kind of like I had different people in my band representing each thing. Everybody understood a large catalog of music so that we could really have fun and play with. If I could reference something, someone would always know exactly where to go, which was amazing.
Right. It's very interesting the way that works, I guess, especially because you initially mentioned obviously great records, but I think you mentioned McCartney and Lyndon Ronstadt. That's sort of considered, I guess, in folklore, it's sort of considered less cool than some of the other things, like the French stuff and what I heard, things like the Velvet Underground. But it's so interesting the way they mix together. What I also wanted to ask you is, I know, if I'm not mistaken, that the single, so this is before the album has even come out, has been reviewed by Rolling Stone, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm really curious. Well, in a way, I'm really curious what that feels like, given the history of the magazine and just the people that have been featured in Rolling Stone.
Yeah, it's obviously cool. It's still, I'm still a human who loves music, and to be in Rolling Stone is just a cool thing for any artist. And I certainly wasn't expecting it. I had no idea that it was going to happen. So it was a pretty cool surprise. And obviously, as an artist, that press is press, and it doesn't make you richer or I mean, it can lead to opportunities, but it doesn't like change who you are or make you any cooler as a person. It's just really nice to have someone that you respect, review your music and say really nice things about it. If anything, it was just nice to not feel like I was crazy for chasing it. It was, like I said, it was more emotional validation for me. Not that you need to be validated by press. I loved the record and I loved what we did, but it's more for people like your parents who, they don't read indie blogs. So as soon as your parents see that you're in Rolling Stone, they're just like, oh, okay, now I don't have to worry about you anymore,
I imagine.
Even though you're still broke, they don't know that. They think all of a sudden you're famous and you're rich. And, but yeah, so if anything, it gets some people off your back to stop worrying about you, and they get excited. So it's really nice. It's an honor always to be included in a magazine that you respect.
That's brilliant. And I guess lastly, I need to ask you what you're planning to do with obviously releasing the album. And since we're going through a rather strange, difficult time, I guess promotion-wise, things are changing. If you have any plans or strategies for it.
No, I don't. I joke that I as horrible as the pandemic is, I feel like it was the perfect year for me to release, because I have really bad stage fright, and I love playing live. After I do it for a couple of weeks, I get back in the swing of it, but it really puts a strain on my nerves to play live and do live streams and that kind of thing. So I'm actually kind of glad that I don't have to do the really rigorous press touring schedule or fly to New York and LA and do big release shows. And I do love playing live, and I miss it, but I'm more of a homebody than I am a road dog. So I love being at home in a sweater with a cup of tea, writing music instead of being on the road repeating it over and over. I like doing like a few months of touring every year, but I'm not really a person who wants to be on a tour bus 365 days a year. So but as far as promoting, I think I'm just going to trust the process. I have a great PR person who encouraged me to put the album out. It wouldn't have come out without him pushing me. So it's just he and I started a record label to put the album out. And so I'm just hoping that people like the music, and because that's really all we've got. It's just press and me. So I don't have like a big marketing person or a label or anything like that. So it actually does make it a little bit more rewarding to get nice press when you're doing it, because you don't have a big machine behind you pushing it. So it feels extra nice to have people recognizing it and actually enjoying it just because they like it and not because someone's telling them to like it.
Right. And I understand that Iceland and the Scandinavian countries, they're also very, they have an attitude that's very sort of friendly towards artists and experimentation and things like that. They're very carefree about that, I suppose.
Yeah, they're amazing. They've been amazing here. Icelanders love art. They love music. The culture here is just, it's really wonderful. It's kind of a writer's dream for me. I mean, to be able to walk by the ocean every day and see the mountains and have beautiful scenery. And there's just kind of an art and writer's culture in Iceland. I think they say like 1 in every 5 person in Iceland publishes a book.
Wow.
So there's a lot of authors, and it's just like to me, it's a very intellectual kind of cozy place to kind of hole up and write and be artistic. And it's also a very grounding place to release a record, because I think in America you'd have all your friends going, oh my God, you're Rolling Stone, you're doing this, you're doing that. And here people are just like, cool, okay, do you want to go get dinner? It's not like, nothing's a big deal, because it's so small here. Everybody knows famous people. Everybody knows Bjork, or so it's someone who's done something big, or because it's such a tiny town. So it's actually really nice to be in a place where there's no spikes of kind of excitement, or you can kind of just stay really steady, and people kind of give you a little nod of like, good job, and that's it, and kind of move on. So it's nice.
That's brilliant. And not art, regarding art, but I remember reading that when the Icelandic football team is doing pretty well, and that they were one of the only countries where they had nearly 100% viewership of their games, just because everyone was involved and just because the population itself is not tremendously large. When does lastly, when does the album actually come out, and will you be releasing any further singles before or afterwards?
Yeah, the album comes out on December 9th, so I think just in a like a week from now, I think. So yeah, it comes out in a week, and there will be 2 more singles that come out just the day before the album is released, so people can access a quick stream, but they're kind of coming out with the album release. So yeah, there's another song called Mirror, which actually is the only song that is co-written on the album with my friend Erin Ray, and the last song on the album called Be True, which is kind of I say it's like encapsulates the entire record. It's kind of the closing chapter of the album.
I'm very excited to hear those, and I wish you all the best with the release of the record, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to interview me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you as well. This was brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.